Hello everyone, welcome back to Engage Sydney. My name is Khan and I'm the Regional Sales Director at Bullhorn. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling incredibly nervous about what changes are coming. And I'm also very excited about the opportunities that AI, Bullhorn, and our industry are going to experience in the upcoming years. With that, I am incredibly honored to introduce the next speaker over here, who's a thought leadership expert, who's also an author of a dozen leadership books, and he's also the founder of an incredible consulting company. He's going to take us through this session today, who's going to uplift the energy and get us ready for what changes are coming ahead. Without further ado, welcome Matt Church.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Good. Thank you, Khan. Hello, everybody. How are you? To the rest of you, how are you? Very good. It's a pleasure to be here. Hey, Khan, can you find the remote control that disappeared off the podium? Oh, here it is. I found it. Good stuff. Hey, we're on Gadigal land. So in Gadigal, you say hello by saying Bujari. So can we try that? Bujari. It's got a good mouthfeel. It's a lovely word, isn't it? So I'd like to acknowledge that we are standing on Gadigal country, First Nations land, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders here today. It's an honour to be on ground that's never been ceded. This is my Indigenous knowledge mentor. His name is Tyson Yunkaporta. Is anybody from Victoria? All right, is anybody from Geelong? So Great Ocean Road, you know that Deakin University is right at the start of it. And Tyson is the Professor of Indigenous Knowledge at Deakin University. And he makes a really cool distinction. It's a distinction between, his undergraduate degree is in complexity studies. And he says, what's the difference between something that's complicated and something that's complex? At the Santa Fe Institute, where they study this kind of stuff, they have an agreement. Because I don't know about you and I could almost say they're interchangeable words. But their definition as a complicated thing is something that's made by people. And so it requires like an intelligence to figure it out. So I wouldn't know how to fix a phone. Everyone agree? Like unless you had a specific knowledge, I couldn't fix a phone. But I can tell you my mum's mood when I talk to her on one. And so complexity is not requiring an intelligence, but it's requiring an empathy or an understanding. And I reckon your job requires both. I think that we're here for Bullhorn to learn about how to enhance technology, how to improve systems and processes, and how to take the grind out of recruiting. So I get that as an idea. But I'd like to pose for the next few minutes that it's actually your ability to be human as a leader that is the force multiplier going forward. And I feel like I'm preaching to the converted because you're in the business of people. You're in the business of talent. You're in the business of finding them, placing them, developing them. And so it's an honour to be here in that space. This is Professor Meg Wheatley. She's super cool. Oh my gosh. She's in her 9th decade. She's a professor from Sydney University. She studied at Harvard and got her PhD in that space. And she's a guru of living systems. And she says if you're trying to change a system, you do it people at a time, creating little pools and islands of calm. So if you ever feel like you're trying to nudge a culture in a direction and you don't know how, just left hand, right hand, and that triumvirate, those three people, the one on your left, the one on your right, that becomes your possibility for change. I've got to sort of check. I don't know how old you all are. Some of you could be quite young. Who remembers that phone? If you dropped it, what happened? What was your favourite thing on that phone? It was Snake. Who kept a phone for 3 months longer than you needed to, carried another phone because you weren't ready to give up Snake? Is anybody with me? So I graduated to Purple Rain. I had a flock of seagulls haircuts. I'm still looking for West Coast coolers. Who's with me? I remember when music came on cassette tape. Anybody else? Do you remember doing a mixtape for someone you were stalking? And do you remember it was always the third song was the important one. It needed the subliminal message. You didn't want to peak too early. But I'd like to do a quick age check of this room to see who's here. If I showed you a cassette tape, for those who are Gen Zs, it's like a Spotify playlist you can't change. If I was to show you a cassette tape and a pencil, would you understand the relationship between the two? This is a generational moment. If you could take a moment with the people next to you, find the youngest person either around you, behind or front, and demonstrate the technique. What do you need to do? Yeah, you've heard about it. You've never seen it. Oh, you have not. Too young, too young. Nokia. Who had that phone? Show of hands who had that phone. 98% market share in Australia. In 2 quarters, they got to less than 9%. Because the business they were in changed. And I wonder, with AI and the age of recruiting, whether this is happening in your industry. I wonder possibly if there's a massive shift, and I want to talk to this just a little bit about what some are the competitive advantages. If we did an MBA course and we were doing the innovation lecture, the professor would come out and she'd show you a picture of a drill. She'd then say, what business are you in? Our conversations would go on. We'd say things like hardware. We'd say sales, retail, building, construction. But she'd drop the mic at the end when she goes, I wonder if you're in the business of making holes. And if someone comes up with a better way of making holes, stop selling drills. I think that the context of recruiting is always going to be about people. But I wonder if you ask yourself, what business are we in? Each agency, each division, each business that you represent might have a different answer, and that's completely okay. Some of you might be in fulfillment. The team down here are in diversity and inclusion, opportunity and equality. So we know, as an Indigenous recruiter specialising in that area, they've got this deep focus for one particular context. The last decade, I reckon business has been about a race to the future, a battle for attention, and the war for talent. And they're phrases that I think have driven what we've done. And I'm going to propose that we want to place our bets for tomorrow on being closer. That's closer to talent, closer to candidates, getting closer to your clients, closer to your culture. It's closer to your internal, external customers. And I think intimacy is absolutely what we should be doing in disruption. I was watching some of the tech sessions earlier, giving us better data on recruits, doing things like helping us screen out preference and viability so that we can get closer to the truth rather than dealing with all the spam that you might get when you post an opportunity. I think better's about better humaning. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about psychological safety. It's all these things we've heard about that are critically important. And whilst there's a bit of a whiplash on the planet right now against diversity and inclusion, we know it's a competitive advantage. And so those of you who are recruiting will continue to use that as a strength going forward. And then I think the third bet for the future is on holding a bigger space. And to us, we might call this presence, we might call this awareness, or we might call it being a conscious leader. And I reckon these 3 things are going to set us up for success. This is Carl Jung. He wrote a book called The Little Red Book. And Carl Jung is famous for saying a bunch of things, but the one I love the most is he says, until you make your unconscious conscious, you will go through life repeating patterns and you'll call it fate. So I don't know if you've ever done like a personality test, like a Myers-Briggs. I don't know if you've ever done anything like an awareness test, like Synergistic International's LSI. Maybe you've done a Gallup strengths test. Each one of these things is building a sense of awareness around who I am in the world and the impact I have on those around us. Jung was talking about this years ago, and he said that we make sense of the world through 3 lenses. Now, he was a posh academic, so he used big words like cognitive, emotive, and intuitive. But if you want to translate them, they're really straightforward. It's think, feel, know. When we make sense of the world through our thinking, and I think this is quite useful, to be present and to be aware, to hold a bigger space for other people, I think we need to sort of separate our thinking from our awareness. When teaching this, a lot of people would like to say, imagine your thoughts are out here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how inner dialogue takes us offline as leaders and drops us below the line of good intent. Sometimes the noise in your head stops you. Just a quick show of hands, who talks to themselves? And those without their hands up are sitting there going, I don't talk to myself, what a load of rubbish. So we are not our thoughts, but we have thoughts. And when we identify with our thoughts, we get lost in them. So Carl Jung said, realize that thinking is a tool and put it out there. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind joining me after lunch, makes me feel less lonely on stage. Could you take your hands like this, wiggle your fingers, and just push your hands out there and imagine that thoughts were there, not here. This is a thing called psychological distance. If you find that your inner dialogue is not very helpful, one of the things to do is to talk about it in the third person, to talk about your thoughts. I was working with someone the other day who said to themselves, they went, "Can you just be helpful for once?" Isn't that a great pattern interrupt? It's not that they were lost in their thoughts, they were able to interrupt that moment. If you place your thinking out here, I think everything's better. When we make sense of the world through our feelings, it's fabulous. And to feel your feels is one of the smartest things we can do as a leader. We know that calm is contagious. But one of the problems is when we have a feeling, we start to tell ourselves a story about the feeling. And when that happens, it gets trapped in your body. Have you ever seen a duck have a feeling? A duck will have a feeling and it'll go, and then it'll go, and walk off. When we hold our feelings in dialogue and story and narrative with ourselves, they recur. And this is what Jung was talking about with recurring patterns. So feel your feels and locate them in your body somewhere. When you do that, what you're able to do is breathe through the feeling and not get a dialogue going about it. But if we're truly going to be able to work with talent into the future in the age of AI, because make no mistake, we are absolutely firmly in the decade of disruption. We are right at the start of the age of AI, and we are at the beginning of the Asian century. So over the next 100 years, there's going to be extraordinary change geographically and geopolitically, and we're experiencing a lot of that in our lifetimes. We will have a lot of thoughts, but we're not them. We're going to have a lot of feelings, have them, but don't tell yourself stories about them, because composed, calm, and contagious conscious leadership happens back here. In fact, the competitive advantage, I think, in the age of AI is not productivity, it's presence. It's to understand who you're being in a moment. One of the tech sessions in this room just before lunch was doing, and I apologise to the speaker, they were showing that they can pick up voice recordings, and from those voice recordings they can get tone and emotive state of the candidate who's answering the questions, which is going to be super useful for you as recruiters. I have one big idea for the next few minutes, and that is that to be a leader is not positional. And whilst we're all in the business of talent, we can think that leadership is a position, like you have a C-suite title or an SLT or an ELT, but it's actually a decision, because you all know people in positions of leadership who don't act like it. Leadership doesn't happen in meetings. If I said to you, you've got 10 minutes, go be a leader, what are you going to do? Like, does anybody know what to do? Is it like, do you punch out a memo and email it to everybody? What about getting a little slide deck and presenting it? What about calling a meeting just to consult everybody and act like we're busy? None of those things are leadership, because leadership is a moment thing about state. You know when you're with a leader. So here's the thing. We just have to decide to be leaders. And we notice at any given moment throughout the day, we can step down from that. And I want to talk about the things that take us offline. Anthropologically, this is called chiefing. And I don't know, when I say the word chief, I reckon it sounds gendered. Don't you reckon? It could sound, but that's just the patriarchy that's created that, because in fact it's a non-gendered word. In Malawi, one of a landlocked African nation you can see is just under Zambia, next to Mozambique. It has this fantastic lake in the middle. But right in the middle is a province called Zedza, pronounced Zedza with a D. And this is Chief Teresa Kachimoto. She is the first female chief in Malawi. Now, Malawi has some massive human rights issues that it's dealing with. It's got some real evolution. She's made it her mission to end child brides. And it was something that she's rippling through the nation and getting huge external support for. So this idea that it's gender specific, we might be able to loosen that up. And I invite everybody to see that we could be a chief. During COVID, schools went into lockdown. They had to work super hard but they went to work turning schools online, and it was a really tough period for a lot of leaders. Deloitte was brought in to help identify what leadership looks like in a school. So I reckon we could have a conversation with the people next to you in a minute, and you'll be able to come up with a list as good as Deloitte did. Lots of respect to the team from Deloitte if they're in the room. So they went in and they said, how do you know a principal, school principal, is being a leader? And they gave really specific examples. So it wasn't like build trust, it wasn't like listen, it wasn't like be visible. It was really specific stuff. Kid's birthday, go to classroom, give Freddo Frog, sing happy birthday. They came up with 42 things that if you're walking around with a clipboard, you could go tick, they did that. I reckon you can come up with a lot of these things, but one of them was 10 times more impactful than the next. So one of them was super off the charts. So I'd like you to try and come up with some of the 42. I'd love you to chat to the people next to you. Steve's going to play some funky music in a minute. If the person's non-responsive, move. And you're trying to identify what is something specific a school principal could do to demonstrate leadership. You've got about 8.5 seconds. Talk really quick. Hit it, Steve. Go for it. All right. Those of you at the back of the room, I love you, but I can't hear you. So those of you at the front of the room, I need you to really bring it for me if you wouldn't mind. Yell out, and I'll repeat it, yell out something you think a school principal could do that demonstrates leadership. Listen, I allocated 4 minutes for this, for us to at least stretch on and talk for ages. I didn't expect you to nail it first time. She said, meet him at the gate. Because if you noticed, a drop off and pick up, if the principal is visible, we go, yeah, leadership. Because they talk to the parent, they go, hey Janelle, nice to see you, thanks for coming. They grab the kid out and they go, Benny, here's your backpack, you're good, have a good day today, I'll see you in maths, if they're a teaching principal and the kid goes off. It turns out that the most important thing that a leader can do is greet with intent. This means that when you say hello, you mean it. And there are a number of ways to say hello. I've got friends where a backwards head tilt, that's a big hello. But whatever it is in your context, maybe it's a group text out to your team. I had the opportunity to work with Joanne Jarvis, School Leadership Institute for the Department of Education here in New South Wales. One of the most extraordinary leaders I've ever seen. One of the things she does every day, she's a history teacher by training. So she'll send a message out to a team and go, on this day in 1968, this happened. Julia is doing a presentation in Terrigal this afternoon. Maybe we could all send her a lot of love. Bang. How would you feel working for someone who did that? The greeting with intent doesn't have to mean that we're in the same space. There are lots of ways to do it. Bujari is how Gadigal say hello. Namaste is how my Hindi friends say hello, which is that the God in me or the divine in me greets the divine in you. My Islamic friends will put their hand on their heart and drop down as they say hello to me. There are so many different ways we get to say hello. Zulu say sawabona, which is a beautiful way of saying I see you. This is Master Thai. Thich Nhat Hanh was a Vietnamese monk. He passed away 2 years ago. And Master Thai, during the Vietnam War, got out of Vietnam. And this is him with Martin Luther King Jr. at the beginning of the peace marches as they walked in to Washington. He was proposed for the Nobel Prize that year by Dr. King. Because of McCarthyism and communism in the US, it didn't happen because he came from a communist country. But Master Thai would say, if you want to greet with intent, he said, in behind your eyes needs to be the thought, I see you and it makes me happy. That's very different to, yes, hello, I've got a meeting, I'm very busy. It's very different to, hello, yep, hand nod, I'm on the phone, yep. Because to take a moment and to meet sincerely with another with strong intent could be one of the greatest gifts we give to others. In the age of AI, humanity is going to be the force multiplier, and leadership is the decision that's going to get you there. When you come home at the end of the day, who greets you the best? Shameless cute dog on screen. But your dog's not greeting you because it loves you. I'm sure your dog loves you. Your dog is greeting you, and some people, they give me feedback on this. They go, I wish you didn't say this. This is really unhelpful. My dog loves me. And I go, I believe you. But what it's actually doing is it's checking in for psychological safety. What your dog's doing is it's going, well, you know this, right? Who's come home, the dog's gone, I love you. First of all, are there any cat people here? Okay, I think we're done. Unless your cat's like a dog, and then I love your cat. So one of the things that happens when the dog is saying hello to you is it's checking in and it's going, am I okay? Are you okay? Are we okay? I'm okay. Are you okay? Are we okay? Am I okay? And it's continually looping. And you know this because you walk out to take the rubbish out and you come in 3 minutes later and it greets you just the same as it greeted you when you first came home after being away for 8 hours. So the dog is looking for a form of psychological safety. This regulation was passed 18 months ago, ISO 45103, around basically, not that you have to be a psychologist if anyone works for you or with you, but rather you create the conditions where people feel safe and that they can thrive, which is a fundamental difference. There's a lot of great experts in this area. I love this infographic from the Centre for Creative Leadership, where they say a psychologically safe place is where, first of all, we make that a priority. That it's okay for you to be here. You're okay, I'm okay, we're okay. The second one is that we sort of get everybody talking. I'll just get out of the shot for you, that nobody is necessarily left mute or quiet. We know that they establish norms for failure, so we can talk about learning and growing and that it's safe to actually disclose you're stuffed up. You don't have to cover things up. That we create space for new ideas, even wild and crazy ones, and that we embrace productive conflict. If you want to create psychological safety, start by greeting with intent. Make it your job to be the one who says hello first. There's this beautiful, beautiful phrase about the stars and falling in love with the constellation. And it says, if equal loving cannot be, may the more loving one be me. The leadership decision, smile first. Greet like you mean it. Non-conditional, unconditional, radiating it out. This is going to be the stuff that people are going to be looking for from bosses and leaders. This is Wade Davis, cool cat, love his outfit. Wade is an anthropologist. So archaeologists think Indiana Jones, Lara Croft. They look at dead societies and study them. Anthropologists look at living societies. I mean, neither are employable. But they're really interesting people to have conversations with. This is Wade Davis's book called Wayfinders, and in it he talks about the 3 things we need if we're going to thrive in a team, in a culture, or in an organisation. He calls them the Bs. Being is the first one, right? I've got to be myself and not feel like any of me is unwelcome. So it's Mardi Gras week right now. Happy Mardi Gras. Do you know what I mean? It's the idea that all of you is welcome and you don't have to mute any bit of you. The idea of belonging is what we're going to talk a little bit about, but the smile, the greet with intent, says you're welcome here. It's the person who stands up when you approach a table. This is the person who's made the decision to be an agent of impact and influence. In other words, a leader. Becoming is the growth piece. And the reason talent and recruiting and developing talent and why people move is they're not becoming all they can be in organisations and they want to go and become more. You guys know that's a moment of truth in the talent movement sort of lifeline, is people say, I need more out of this. It was Abraham Maslow who talked at... Now, if I say Abraham Maslow, is there a shape that comes up in your mind? Can anyone show me with your fingers the shape that you're thinking of? If you look around, it's a triangle. He never drew the triangle. One of his students was doing study notes, summarised his work in a triangle, and then distributed it around the world. Talk about the power of a symbol. This is the book that now has the triangle on the cover, but it didn't in its original version. Who's seen this before? Yeah, it basically says, if I can't get food, I don't care about self-esteem. And this explains like why someone might poach the white rhino out of existence. Why would you do that? And you go, because if I kill a white rhino, they're all extinct now. If I did kill a white rhino, it would feed my family for a year. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd go, white rhino, family, please. I'm going to take care of them. So I think this has shifted, though, in the last couple of years. First of all, I think we all agree I'll go without McDonald's as long as I've got Wi-Fi, although now I can get it at McDonald's, what a win. But what they're saying is social belonging is now the bedrock in most of our societies. And this means if you want to hold on to talent in an organisation, a culture of belonging is commercially one of the smartest things you can do. It's not a nice to do, it's not a soft skill, it's not something we do instead of return on shareholder value. You won't get shareholder value if you can't get a team of people, talented people, working together more effectively. I'm just going to pause for a photo. Turns out it's a movie. Hi. Nice. The second thing that chiefs do is they start the fire every day. Now, I'd love you to take a moment. Steve will give you some funky music. If I just said fire as a metaphor for what chiefs do, it's obviously clearly in a village, they literally start the fire. They go and they're the first one up, they start the fire, and then they greet with intent as people wake up. But metaphorically, what do you reckon it means? Here's some funky music. Chat to the person on the other side. You've got 12 seconds this time to have a chat about what does the fire mean? Hit it, Steve. Oh, I'm going to stop for you. Hang on. Do the hand. Thank you, Steve. So what does warmth mean? What does the fire mean? It's like the energy, the vibe, yeah? Setting the tone. Yeah, absolutely. Someone got some bad news, how do you respond to it? Someone's in difficulty, how do you introduce that to the room? One of your team is hurting and absent, how do you talk about them? Yeah, this is really important to understand fire. Joanne took us to New Delhi. We had the opportunity with a group of leaders to meet Sugata Mitra. And just before COVID, I had the opportunity to watch Professor Mitra sort of explain something quite remarkable that's happened in India. He's the professor of pedagogy. So ped means children. So paediatric medicine is someone that does children for medicine. Pedagogy is the study of teaching kids. So if you were a school teacher, you'd say you learnt what was the pedagogical principles of the school. So he's the head of pedagogy. The reason they're doing this is India has 400 million kids who can't go to school. And it's not because they don't have the money, it's to do with language. There are so many languages that they can't get the textbooks, they can't get the teachers, and they can't roll the curriculum out. About 12 years ago, he put a hole in the wall of his business school. So he works for the government and works for New Delhi Uni and owns a business school that gives you an IT degree, so a Bachelor of Science in Informational Technology. And there's wealth and poverty side by side in India. He turns the hole in the wall, puts an internet-enabled computer in, turning out to the alley where the kids who don't speak English, 98% of the internet was English 12 years ago, they've never been to school, they don't have electricity, they've never seen a computer. By the end of the day, they're surfing the web. He goes, how's this possible? And they say, you know what, I reckon maybe one of your IT students came down, showed them how to do it, and they're just copying and mimicking. He goes, you know, that's possible. He's an academic, so he controls the variables. He takes it out to a remote village where the kids only speak Tamil. So there's no chance one of his students is going to pass by. They set up what looks like a toilet block, but they set up these internet-enabled computers with satellite dishes, and the kids surf the web. He showed us a video of the day he set it up and the interviews 12 weeks later. The kids on the day he set it up said, what is it? And he said, I don't know. He didn't want to influence their outcomes. They said, can we touch it? And he said, sure. And the kids said, what if we break it? He said, there's no consequences. Knock yourself out. He comes back 12 weeks later, and I want to explain, these kids had no one to help, they had no teacher, no one to show them what it was, they've never seen it before, they don't have electricity, they don't speak English, they don't go to school. These kids are surfing the net. He goes, how's this possible? Now, if English is your first language, this might not be remarkable, but the kids go, it was really difficult. First, we had to teach ourselves English. Now, they didn't learn all English, but they learned enough to surf the web. And he said, "You're just playing games though, aren't you?" And the kids going, yeah, we're not learning anything, we're just playing games. And there was this little boy, it was in subtitles, but I didn't need it. He's clearly pissed off. He's going, "We need a faster processor and a better mouse." It just sounds like a modern school nowadays. There was this little girl, she's 12, her mother passed away from cancer the year before. And when asked the question, "Are you just playing? Have you learnt anything?" She goes, "No, I don't think we've learnt anything, except that maybe the improper replication of a DNA molecule leads to cancer." What this kid's done is she's gone, "What killed Mum was cancer." She goes, "What's cancer?" "Improper replication of a DNA molecule." What's improper? What's replication? What's DNA? What's molecule? And for 12 weeks, she's been driven and obsessed to learn. The conclusion might be that we don't need teachers. The conclusion might be, if we can tap into intrinsic motivation, amazing things happen. Here we are, 12 to 15 years later, since this began as an idea, and kids have graduated university. So without school, without teachers, they've been able to sit the SATs to get into a university. They've then got in and graduated university. That's quite extraordinary. That means they're coming back as nurses, as doctors, as teachers, as lawyers and solicitors, and they had no school, they had no teachers, but they had aunties. Now, a term of endearment and respect in India is to be called an auntie or an uncle. It doesn't mean that we're biologically related, but it's like, "This is my auntie," or "Thank you, auntie." And so aunties are retired school teachers, normally out of the United Kingdom, who Skype in. This was a decade ago, there was no Zoom. Right, so they Skype in, and they still to this day do. On their procedure manual, you see here, School in the Cloud, what aunties do is they go, ask the kids what they've worked on, ask them what they're going to work on next week. So it goes backwards and it goes forwards. Sounds like a team meeting, right? What have you been doing? What are you going to do? But in the middle, they do something quite profound. Ask them what they're going to do, say something encouraging, ask them what they're going to do next. So every week they come in. The kids storm around. They sort of gather around these TVs, these computers. They talk to the aunties. There are some uncles, but it's mostly aunties. And the auntie goes, "What have you been doing?" Blah, 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 blah. The auntie says, "That's amazing," so that's praise, and then lowers status. "I couldn't have done that when I was your age." Because encouragement from a position of power over creates brittle kids. But when the encouragement is with the people, it elevates them up. So much so that I reckon these aunties are demonstrating that encouragement, the ability, if you don't know what to do and someone says, "I better be a leader right now," just go say something encouraging. And it's a tough thing because not all cultures want to receive it. Chiefs start the fire every day. I'm often brought in to look at teams that might not be working optimally and to look at the human dynamics of how they work together. My friend, Peter Baines, got the Order of Australia Medal last year for Hands Across the Water, a charity that I've had the opportunity to work on the board for. And basically it's orphanages in Thailand. He was a cop who was at PP Beach doing disaster victim identification on the Boxing Day tsunami. He saw these kids under a marquee who'd lost their parents, these Thai kids, and he said, "That's not okay." And so Fiona Robinson, Constable Fiona Robinson, his UK counterpart, and he came together to set up Hands Across the Water. They've built 20 orphanages now. And I was talking with him recently. They build it so that it's a tsunami-proof orphanage in the centre of town. That's $500,000. And then what they do is they buy a rubber plantation for another $500,000 that funds it so the orphanage never needs a handout ever again and the kids are good forever. Centre of the... It's such a cool idea. He's written a book called Doing Good by Doing Good. And if you're interested in how can we make altruism and CSR more exciting, I think that book and talking to Peter might be really, really useful. They put warning buoys off the coast of Thailand. There's one way out, and if there's a tectonic shift or a seismic event, we get a warning that says, "Hey, something might happen." A little closer in, we've got, "Hey, something's not only going to happen, but it's likely it's going to hit shore. We just don't know where." And then the third one that's really close goes, "It's going to hit shore, it's going to hit there, get everyone to high ground or get them into the orphanage, the tsunami-proof building in the village." I reckon the three things that destroy teams can be experienced like these warning buoys. There's one out here, it's not a big problem, but it's a little bit of a problem, and that's gossip. The problem with gossip is it's such a human thing and it makes us belong. You and I go, "Hey, we're good, Alex. But this person over here, not so good. And we talk about them and they're not here. Number one rule of leadership is to talk to people, not about people. So gossip tells me there's a seismic event in your team. It's not a big problem, it's what humans do to belong. It creates belonging. As a leader, just don't do it. The second thing is sarcasm. Sarcasm often exists if you're trying to speak truth to power. So if you've got no influence or you're in a minority group, you'll often be sarcastic as a last refuge to get your point across. But it's actually used for humility. So if gossip helps us create belonging, very crudely, sarcasm helps make people a little humble. You'll see this with a sporting team where a new person comes in as amazing, and in the locker room they'll be sort of like take the tickets off them. You talk them down just a little bit. The problem with sarcasm is it breaks the second rule. If the first rule is talk to me, not about me, the second is praise in public, give feedback in private. And sarcasm is passive, aggressive criticism in public. Doesn't matter if you're not in a position of privilege, but it really does matter if you are. The symbol that I put for this is this sort of like wry, sort of smiley face. It's the sort of one that goes, oh, come on, I was just joking. Can't you take a joke? If I'm in a position of privilege, in other words, if you look like me, pale, male, or stale, if you are doing sarcasm with a peer, cool. But if anyone in the room is not of the same age, the same position, the same gender, or the same ethnicity, your banter is now brutal. And it's a really simple process. You've abdicated leadership by bringing sarcasm into the space. Gossip, crude. Sarcasm, crude. Cynicism, Adam Grant tells us, the organisational psychologist, is basically a function of voice not being distributed. If my voice can't get heard, I'll get cynical. We know cynics because we look in the rooms during meetings through glass walls. They're the person who puts their hand up like they're going to be shot. And they go, look, I don't know if this is okay for me to share this right now, but I feel the need to say. These three indicators are like the tsunami warning buoys on Thailand's coastline. Gossip, not a big problem, but I'm looking. Gossip and sarcasm, I'm going, watch out. Gossip, sarcasm and cynicism, I've got a team that's not performing at their best. This sounds kumbaya. I want to ground it if I can. Professor Linda Hill, Harvard University, wrote a book on collective genius after 10 years studying high-performance organisations. She says we need three things. We need heaps of ideas, marketplace of ideas. We need iterative disclosure. I can share my stuff even when it's not finished. And the third one, and this is where the rubber hits the road, is creative abrasion. This ability to disagree. Thriving teams can have robust conversations that sound like an argument, except they're respectful. Stephen Fry says, go to Oxford Uni, not for the degree, go to Oxford Uni to develop the Oxford manner, which is the ability to disagree gracefully. The third thing we do as chiefs, and this brings us to close, is chiefs hold a bigger space, both inside them and for those around them. The symbol for me is I want to be right-sized for any moment and any person. I want to be able to hold space for people to rattle around. There's things like forgive with ease, operate above the line. These all speak to this idea. But I reckon our inner dialogue, as I sort of foreshadowed, gets in the way. It kind of takes us offline. There's this pendulum, isn't there, between I'm too much, it's not okay to be in this room, and I'm not enough. Who's swung across this pendulum at any time in their life? Every candidate's doing it when they make shifts. This is Professor Ethan Kross. He spent his lifetime thinking about it and working on it. And he wrote this book, Chatter. I've recommended about 8 books so far, and I'm sure you're tracking all of them. My advice is go to ChatGPT and go summarise Ethan Kross's Chatter in 500 words. Give me 3 practical takeaways and 1 question to contemplate or consider if I had read that book. And I have done this across every book I recommend, and ChatGPT is spot on. So because I've read the book, I can know if it's cheating and just giving me answers. It's actually summarising the books and giving a practical scaffold. 4,000 books came out today. If you read a book a day this year, you'd be lucky if you read the books that came out today. We're going to have to adapt and adopt new ways of learning, and I reckon AI can do a lot of our summarising and our synthesising. The number one tip he suggests is to develop psychological distance. In fact, what you might want to do is use third-person language. Matthew is talking like this, or like the person I was working with that was like, hey, could you just be helpful for once in your life? And essentially, you kind of create a donkey that talks back to you. If you can not get lost in your thoughts, but you can create some psychological distance, everything gets better. But our identification drops us into this space. If I was to say one thing that would help you have more presence, turn down the inner dialogue so that you can actually connect genuinely with the people you're working with. Your brain moves at 800 words per minute. The average person speaks at 150. I speak at 200. That means there's a gap still of a ton of words that you've been thinking. Who's thought of something in my presentation completely unrelated to what I'm talking about? Well, that's just rude. But it's human nature. If you can increase your presence in any moment, you'll increase your impact. It's more important than productivity in the age of AI, and it's going to be the skill that your candidates are going to need to lead. It's going to be the skill that you're going to develop in your organisations. In the age of AI, conscious leadership is the force multiplier. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.